welcome back to our channel. Today I wanted to do a story time and share with you guys the story of what happened 8.5 years ago when we had to file bankruptcy. I'm not even sure if I have ever mentioned it on our YouTube channel that happened to us, but I did mention it on TikTok, and I have had a lot of requests on there to go ahead and do a story time. The whole reason why I even got brought up on TikTok is I like to be as transparent as possible with you guys, and I get a lot of comments on TikTok, mostly from kids, saying, must be nice to be rich, you don't know what it's like to struggle, blah, blah, blah. And I finally came out and said, actually, you know what, we do. 8.5 years ago, we lost it all, and we had to start completely over from scratch, and we did not just get everything handed to us. We are where we're at today because of hard work, dedication, and basically we learned some hard life lessons along the way. So I thought today I would share that story with you guys. If you have any questions, like specific questions about bankruptcy or our financial journey, maybe like budgeting things, stuff like that, please leave them down below in the comments. And if I have enough questions, I can go ahead and do like a Q&A video about it. Otherwise, I can just respond to your questions in the comments. I will share with you guys how I budget our monthly bills. I'm not a coupon guru. I like joke with Chris that I'm like the budgeting queen. But it's like all self-taught. It's stuff I've learned from my parents along the way and throughout the years. And so I would love to share with you guys the system I use. It's really old school and nothing fancy, but I'm happy to share if it can help anyone else. And I'm happy to answer any questions as far as budgeting goes as well. So like I said, if there's enough questions down below in the comments, I will do a Q&A video. I might also make a post on TikTok asking if there's any specific questions that people want answered. And then I can kind of just kill two birds with one stone and do one Q&A video with TikTok comments and YouTube comments. So we'll go ahead and start. Chris and I got married at a very young age. I was 19. It was a month before I turned 20 and he was 19. I'm about 7 months older than he is. Right after we got married, literally like 3 weeks later, he got deployed to Iraq and he was gone for 15 months. I was a dental assistant and he was in the Army. Once he got home, I decided to stay home and we ended up getting pregnant with our first son, Carson. I've done a story time on him. So I've always been, since I got pregnant with Carson, like a stay-at-home mom / housewife. We did fine when he was in the military. Obviously the military doesn't pay extremely well, but our bills were paid. We did not ever have much of a savings though. We were the type of people that we were young, you know, we would get money coming in and we would spend it. We had a few credit cards when he was in the military and we would charge them and then we would pay them off. Sometimes we would have to wait until tax time to pay off our credit cards because we just didn't have that extra money to pay them off. So a lot of interest rates were high, obviously, and a lot of balances just kept gathering interest. When he got out of the Army, Jackson was about 8 months old. And we moved to a really small town in Washington called Packwood, Washington. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but it's just outside of Mount Rainier. I'm talking such a small town that there's not even a stoplight. He started working at a lumber mill there and he made really good money. Things were going great. We decided to actually buy our first house in a town that was about 20 minutes away from there. And we were so excited. So we bought our first home and things were fantastic. He made good money, like I said. He was an hourly employee. We bought our first home in January of 2011 and life was great. We still used our credit cards, probably shouldn't have. We had a couple like store cards and like I think one regular Visa. And money wasn't necessarily tight, but we lived paycheck to paycheck because we didn't know how to really manage our money. Like I said, we were still so young that like when we had money coming in, we'd be like, oh, like what can we buy? Like what should we get? It wasn't ever a thought of like, let's put some money in savings. Let's do this, let's do that. To us, our savings account came from when we got our taxes back. When we would get our taxes back, we would put money in savings. But at the same time, taxes were also used for if you need to do tires or a large purchase that we couldn't afford or didn't want to put on a credit card, we would wait until tax time. So in January of 2011, we bought our very first home. We were so excited. And then in November of 2011, so not even a year later, Chris lost his job. I was a stay-at-home mom. We were living in an extremely small town. I'm talking just a few thousand people small. And we were screwed. They laid off an entire shift of people at the mill. I think there was like 80 some people that lost their jobs, and Chris lost his job because he was like one of the newer hires. There were people there that lost their job that had worked there their entire lives. When I say like small town, your only options for work there are like if you're a school teacher, if you work at the gas station, the really small IGA grocery store, or if you work at the mill. everybody worked at the mill. And I'm talking like to get to the nearest Walmart was like an hour. We used to drive an hour to get to Jackson's pediatrician. Like this town literally had nothing. So he lost his job. I'm sorry, his iPod keeps going off and I don't know how to silence it. So he lost his job and we were stuck with like, what are we going to do? I was actually pregnant with Cohen at that point. And it was a very scary time. It was like, what are we gonna do to get by and to survive? So there wasn't a choice for me to go back to work. I was actually a high risk pregnancy and I was on bed rest for quite a while at that time. So Chris started looking for a new job and he actually found a job. Sorry, just gonna power it off because it keeps beeping. He actually found a job working for a Les Schwab Tire Center, but it was over an hour away. So when he took this job and accepted it, his pay got cut like in half. And it was now like an hour and 15-minute commute one way to work. And it was like, how are we going to do this? So my brother actually lived in the town where he got the job at Les Schwab. And he was traveling at the time for work, but had an apartment there. So he told Chris, you can stay in my apartment. And that way you don't have to commute for work, because that would have been expensive for us to pay that much in gas for him to commute to work. And not to mention when it's winter, it's just not safe, you know, like in the snow. We live near a mountain pass. So Chris went ahead and moved down there, and we basically only saw him on his days off and the weekends. And we tried that for like about a month. And we quickly realized that him taking a job that paid less than half of what he was making wasn't going to cover our bills. It wasn't going to cover our mortgage. We only had one car payment, but it wasn't going to cover all of our bills. Because of the complications I was having with my pregnancy with Cohen, we had like medical bills that were stacking up. So that was super stressful. And then we, like I said, we had those credit cards, the credit cards that we always said, like, we'll wait till tax time to pay it off. We'll wait, it's fine. Like we always had a balance on our cards. They were never paid off unless it was tax time. It would last for a little while. And then it would be like, oh, like we want to go do this. We want to go do that. We'll just charge it on the credit card and pay it off later. We can make the minimum payment. And I think that was our biggest mistake, was thinking like we can afford that minimum payment. We were definitely, looking back, we were payment shoppers. Yeah, you may be able to afford the minimum payment, but when you look at all the money you're paying in interest by only paying the minimum payment, like you're literally screwing yourselves over. So it came down to the hard decision of like, for one, it was hard for us to live apart. Granted, it was only like an hour and 15 minutes away, but we didn't get to see him a whole lot. I was a high risk pregnancy on bed rest. I had Jackson, who was 2. So we decided that I would move down to where he was and we would get somewhere to live down there together. And that's when we started talking about like, what are we gonna do with our house? We tried calling the bank because my brother offered to buy it and they would not let us sell it to him. They were like, you haven't been here long enough. We can't do anything about it. It hadn't even been a year. So our only option was to give the house back. We didn't want to let it go into foreclosure, but we didn't know what else to do. So in December of 2011, we moved out of that house and it basically sat empty. We moved down to where Chris got his job at, and we started talking to a bankruptcy attorney and figured out what to do. And our best option at the time was to file for bankruptcy because we had a couple store cards, a regular Visa through a credit union that we used to bank at, like just little things like that. But our medical bills were what were killing us from my high risk pregnancy. And looking back, had we, like my parents have always been really good with money, but when you're young, I feel like it's a live and learn type thing. I think it's very rare for young people to just automatically be so fantastic with their money, even if their parents were, even if they had the best examples set for them. It's kind of like, you're young, you're free, you're out on your own, like let's charge some credit cards. And so obviously back then our priority wasn't a savings account. It was always just, like I said earlier, when tax time comes, we'll put that money in savings and then we'll have our savings. But after we would get our tax return back, that money, instead of staying in savings that entire year, it would slowly dwindle down, dwindle down, dwindle down. We were taking money out for tires, you're taking money out for this, you're taking money out for that, to where you get to the end of the year and all of your savings account is gone and you just are waiting to replenish it with your next tax return. And it's a vicious cycle. So we ended up filing for bankruptcy, and we filed and we claimed everything in our bankruptcy. We included it all, I should say, sorry, in our bankruptcy, all of the medical bills, the credit card debt, the house. The only thing, the literal only thing we kept was our vehicle. We bought, when I first, right before actually I got pregnant with Cohen, we bought a brand new Toyota Camry. That was the only thing we kept. Everything else was included in the bankruptcy, the house, everything else. So we literally had the clothes on our back, our belongings, you know, our furniture, Jackson's toys, things like that. You had stuff to fill a house, but we didn't have a house. So We ended up finding somewhere to rent, and it was not a very good situation because the house ended up having black mold, and we all got very, very sick, and the landlord had to actually pay for us to move to a different, like to an apartment instead of this house because the black mold was so bad. So we ended up moving to an apartment. We had Cohen, and we just got to talking, and Chris was in school at the time. He was going to get his bachelor's in human services. He kind of didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was a dental assistant before kids, but it didn't make sense for me to work because all of our money would be going towards childcare. So it made more sense for us financially for me to stay home. So we kind of started like, what do we do? So then he lost his job at Les Schwab. They laid people off, and we were like, okay. He went from this secure, stable job in the Army. Like, we never should have left the Army as where, like, the spot we were at. Looking back, I'm so thankful we did. We are so thankful for the opportunities that the Army, like, offered us and the stable job and the stable income that it provided. But it was like a shock. You're in this real world now where you can lose a job. Like, he's never done anything wrong. He's never gotten fired, but like, times are tough and companies are laying off people, and there went his job. So once again, we had just filed for bankruptcy. We actually went to court to finalize our bankruptcy when Cohen was like a week old, literally a week old. I had to go to court right after having a baby and finalize this bankruptcy. And so around that time, my parents were actually talking about buying a home down in Arizona. They wanted to be snowbirds, which is where you spend like the summer in like Washington, where we were from, and they would spend the winter, the cold months here in Arizona. I had never been to Arizona a day in my life. And we were kind of like, maybe we need a fresh start. Like, where we were living is a small town called Longview. It was where I was born and raised. It's much bigger than where we lived when he first got out of the military in Packwood, but still it didn't offer a lot of opportunity. That town has really gone downhill. There's a really high drug rate in that county. So it was just not somewhere we wanted to raise our kids. And we thought, why don't we do a fresh start? Let's just move to Arizona. What do we have to lose? So my parents bought a house down here, and me never being to Arizona before, we packed up. Our bankruptcy was finalized. We packed up all of our belongings. We got rid of a lot before we moved, but we packed up most of our belongings, and we road tripped down to Arizona for our fresh start. So that was in June of 2012. We moved here 4 weeks after Cohen was born, so he was a month old when we moved to Arizona. And at the time, we were living off of our VA money, our disability money that Chris got every month for being a disabled veteran. We were also living off his unemployment from when he lost his job. And then he was also getting money from using his GI Bill. The military pays you money to go to school. So we were living off of that. So we moved down to Arizona, and we were like, okay, we're doing this. We're getting a fresh start. We stayed in my parents' house from June until October. That first summer here, they moved their things down, and then they went back to Washington for the summer. So Chris and the boys and I stayed in their house from June until October. And right before they came back in October for the winter, we actually found a house to rent. That first summer here, Chris found a job working at like a sporting goods store, and that's what he did. He worked retail. I stayed home with the boys. We had a very minimal amount in rent that we had to pay my parents, so we really just had like our car payment and like the utilities and groceries. Because we had filed for bankruptcy, we didn't have any more credit cards or anything like that, so it was just like your basic bills that you needed to live off of. So utilities, car insurance, things like that. We had to get on state health insurance because the retail place that he was working at did not offer health insurance. So we had to get on state health insurance, and it was a really rough time for us. And it's where you learn to pinch your pennies, you learn to budget, you learn like you don't buy things unless you can afford it. We're not payment shoppers anymore. We're not looking at what's the minimum payment if I buy that. We're looking at how can we build up our savings and have a better life and provide a better life for our children. So he ended up getting another job after that. He left the sporting goods store he was working at, and he started working at a place that was like a school for troubled boys. And this kind of went hand in hand with what he was going to school for. He was still in college at the time, getting his bachelor's in human services, and he was thinking he wanted to be like maybe a social worker. So this really helped out. He worked awful hours though. The pay was a lot better than the sporting goods store, so that was fantastic. But he was working 16-hour days, and he was working like 4 days a week. He'd have like 4 days he worked, and then he'd have like 3 days off. Like I said, the pay was decent, but we never saw him. So around that time, I actually met my best friend, Pam, and her husband actually introduced Chris. He was an electrician, or he is an electrician, and he actually started talking to Chris, like, do you think you'd ever be interested in becoming an electrician? And Chris was like, I never really thought about it. Like, I'm in school right now to become a social worker. Like, I had never thought about it. So he got Chris into the electrical field. He got hired on at the same company that his friend worked at, and they paid for him to go to school to become an electrician. So they paid for all of his trade school, so no student debt, and he became an electrician. So that's kind of where we are at today. He got his journeyman in the electrical field, and he was working as a journeyman electrician, and then at the same company he works for, he applied for an office position doing project management, and he got hired for that. So we are extremely thankful, and it's just kind of crazy how our lives, like, you start literally from the bottom. I'm talking like there was a point when Cohen was a tiny baby and we very first moved to Arizona that we were on food stamps. We didn't know what we were going to do. I was trying to sell extra things we had on like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist to make some extra money because I couldn't afford daycare, so I couldn't afford to go back to work. There was nothing I could do that was like opposite shifts from Chris to where we could work it out to where like he would work, I would stay home, and then we'd switch. Like, it was a really hard time. And we just learned that you have to have faith and you have to change your way of thinking. Cycles are going to repeat itself and you just have to break that cycle. So we've definitely come from having absolutely nothing to where we're at today. And it's not come easy. A lot of people think it's just been handed to us, and that's nothing but opposite from, far from the truth. Now Chris is still working for the same electrical company. He works for the most amazing company we could ever ask for. He has some great people he works for. The guy that owns the company is just phenomenal. And then the program he graduated from, the trade program to become the apprentice program, I should say, I'm sorry, they actually hired him to teach it. So he teaches 2 nights a week, the electrical apprenticeship program, and then I do my social media stuff. So things have taken a complete turn. We're doing fantastic right now, but it doesn't mean because we're doing fantastic that we never have struggled. So that was my whole point in sharing our story with you guys. I hope it wasn't too confusing. I hope that I didn't like just blab on. I tried to give you like the short version, but like not skimp over any details, if that makes sense. I'm just hoping that our story can help someone else out there who may be struggling to know that like you do hit rock bottom. And you might think that it's not going to get better, but I promise you it will get better, and it does get better. And I know that right now a lot of people are having a really hard time with COVID and job loss and things like that. And my heart goes out to anyone who's struggling right now, because we literally have been there. There was a time, like I said, that we were on food stamps. And then when Chris started making a little bit more, when he went to work at that school for boys, we didn't qualify for the food stamps, but we qualified for medical. And I remember crying on the phone with the lady from the Arizona State Department of Economic Security, because I said, how can we not qualify for food stamps? Like, I don't know how we're gonna buy groceries. Like, we could pay for groceries, but it's very minimal, like what we could afford at the time. And I just remember thinking, like, what are we going to do? What are we gonna do? And it was just like, well, we don't have the option. We're not gonna ask for handouts, other than obviously we were on state help, but we truly needed it. And I feel like there's a difference when you need that help, like that's what it's for. So it was like, all right, well, we have to change our lives. We have to change our situation. Sitting here and moping about it isn't going to do anything for us. So I learned how to budget, and I learned how to save money any chance I got. And Chris decided he was going to go and become an electrician. So that's our story. Like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and I will try to answer them. If there's enough, I will do a separate video, like a Q&A answering all of your questions. I just wanted to show you guys really quick what I do in terms of like for budgets. It's really old school. I know that a lot of people are probably doing like spreadsheets and things like that, but I just pen and paper and I make a list. So I'm gonna grab the camera really quick and I'm gonna flip it around and kind of explain what this list is to you guys really quickly. I have to leave here in like 5-10 minutes to get the kids. So I'm gonna try to do this as quick as possible. So forgive me while I turn this around. Okay. Make sure I can get it to focus. So every month I make a list. I put the name, obviously this is bills for March at the top, and then I literally list every bill that we have. So like our mortgage, the Suburban, our water bill, our electric bill, the gas company. This is all the bills we have. HOA, Nordic Track is my Nordic Track S22i. I decided to finance it. It's interest free. And I decided to finance this because, like I said, it's interest free. And you can pay it off early without penalty. The orthodontist is Cohen's braces. So we paid for Jackson's braces in full. Cohen's, we put $500 down, and then we're making monthly payments on his braces. And it's actually through the orthodontist, so another interest-free item. Baseball is just Jackson's baseball fee. We pay monthly for his club ball fee. So that's just what that is. And then everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Hulu, Allstate, this is insurance for our razor. The Progressive is like car insurance. So all of that's pretty self-explanatory. So first I start off by writing down every single bill we have, and then I write down the day that it is due. I also write down if it's auto. So if it's auto, that means that's a payment that comes out automatically. I don't have to think about paying that. I don't have to remember to pay it. Everything else I pay, usually I do online. I don't do like an online bill pay through our bank or anything like that. I just log into accounts that we have and pay them. Then I write down every payday. So Chris at his work gets paid weekly. That was another adjustment for us. When he was in the military, it was every 1st and 15th of the month. So he gets paid weekly. So I write down the Fridays for the month. So there are 4 Fridays in the month of March. So those are his paydays. This does not include any of my social media money or any of his teaching money. He gets paid by check for teaching. He teaches 2 nights a week for an electrical apprenticeship program, and then he teaches 1 night a week for his work. His work does their own separate program for apprentices, and he teaches that one as well. So those both are paid by check, and then my social media is all like direct deposit. So this does not include any of that. When I say extras, these are some cards that we have. These are all paid off. So I put extras because I always just double check. Even if I haven't used them, I like to double check that there's not any fraudulent charges, that everything's good to go on them. So just a regular Visa, an Old Navy store card, a Home Depot card, a Kohl's card, and an Amazon card. Like I said, these do not have a balance. These are all paid off. Now, I might use my Amazon card. I actually use this one quite frequently. I just pay it off every single month. Every single month. So if I charge $300 on that, I'm paying it off so there's no interest. Sometimes there's only $10 charged on it. Most of the time it's a couple hundred just because I'm a big Amazon shopper. So I don't buy anything on Amazon unless I could afford to pay for it with my debit card. So these, like I said, right now, they are all paid off, but I like to just check them because even if I know I haven't used my Old Navy card in, let's say, 5 months, I still want to be checking it at least once, if not twice a month, just to make sure there's not like any fraud or anything funky going on with it. So I always check these. So that's what the extras category is. Once I pay a bill, I cross it off of my list and I write the confirmation number next to it. So once I pay our mortgage, I will cross it off the list and I write the confirmation number down. I've already paid my mortgage, but I wanted to leave this like as a clean slate to kind of show you guys. So once I end this video, I'm going to take the confirmation number that I wrote down on a sticky note and write it right here. And then I just keep this piece of paper until the very end of the month. And then I do throw it away at the end of the month, but it keeps it long enough so I have the confirmation numbers for everything. So if there's any discrepancies, I can say, well, I paid it on this date and here's the confirmation number, that type of thing. As far as one thing I did want to go over really quick before I have to go, as far as building our credit back up, it took a lot of hard work. Once you have a bankruptcy, it's harder to get like a credit card in your name or something like that. So we started off small. I can't remember, it was a couple years after our bankruptcy that we got another credit card finally, like just a regular Visa card through a credit union. And we got another car loan in 2013 because we paid off one of our cars and we needed a van. So we got a used car loan through a credit card company or a credit union and bought a used van in 2013. So we just started making steps to build our credit back up because sadly you do need things like credit cards and auto loans and things like that to help build your credit back up. So what we started, I think the very first card we started with was a Visa and then like the Kohl's card, I believe it was. And we just made sure that whatever we put on there, we paid it off completely. We've left no running balances. There's been like a couple, you know, when we first were getting started, again, a couple rough months where maybe we charged $100 on a Visa and we could only afford to pay the minimum payment of $28 or something like that. So there has been, I'm sorry, my phone was ringing. There has been a couple rough months like that. But within the last several years, we have not left any running balances on any credit cards. We definitely understand the importance of a savings account now. We don't rely on tax returns or anything like that to build our savings. So I do budget groceries. I budget about $150 a week for groceries. That does not include Costco. So I usually spend under that. And then whenever we have extra money, instead of like, I do leave extra money in checking. Things might come up. Maybe we get invited to a restaurant. Maybe we want to go to the movies or take the kids bowling. You know, obviously all these things when it's not COVID. So I do leave some money in checking. I don't completely drain our checking account because I did do that at first. I would be like, oh my gosh, we have like $500 left after paying all of our bills. I'm gonna take $487 of that and put it in savings. And then we're sitting there with like $13 in checking. And Chris is like, why do you do that? So I don't do that anymore. I do make sure that we are putting money in savings. Anytime we get extra money and we leave that cushion in checking, I do take our extra money and I transfer it to savings, because it is extremely important to have at least an emergency fund, at least $1,000. I know $1,000 doesn't get you a lot, but that's a good starting place if you do not have a savings account. Set aside at least $1,000 as an emergency fund. I know that you might think like $1,000, what's that gonna get me? But when you are strapped and very desperate, $1,000 is better than nothing. So now I'm happy to say that we have worked really hard and we have built our savings account up, and we are not struggling. We are not paycheck to paycheck anymore, but it took a lot of hard work. So I'm here to tell you guys that you can definitely do it. You are not alone. I hope that this was not too confusing for you guys with all of my alarms going off and phone calls and everything, but I just wanted to share a story with you. I do have to get going. That is my alarm to remember to go get my children. I have to leave here now in 5 minutes. So I'm gonna let you guys go, but please let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything down below. And if I have enough, like I said, I will do another video, like a Q&A type, and I will answer all your guys' questions. I hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Bye guys.